Rule number one of responsible journalism should be this. When a violent attack happens in a city anywhere in the world, don't publicly jump to conclusions about who did it. Right? It should be simple. But two people who should know better fell foul of that dictum this weekend. Talk TV's Julia Hartley-Brewer and Countdown's Rachel Riley. This was after an attack in Australia that killed 6 people. And Hartley-Brewer tweeted this: "Another day, another terror attack by another Islamist terrorist. 6 dead, others seriously injured, including a baby. Today it's Australia's turn. The other day it was France's. It'll be our turn again next. How long do our governments think we're going to put up with this?" And that post got thousands of retweets, 12,000 likes. Rachel Riley, for her part, tweeted this: "For 6 months now, people have been out on our streets proudly calling for intifada revolution. If you want to know what globalized the intifada looks like, see the Sydney Mall. 5 victims stabbed to death and 8 transferred to hospital, including a baby, due to one man and a knife. In the second intifada, over 1,000 Israelis were murdered in restaurants, on buses, and in the streets by suicide bombings, stabbings, stonings, lynching, shooting, rockets. The youngest victim was just 9 hours old. Sydney Mall, multiple times over, is what they've been proudly calling for." The problem with both of those tweets: the killer was not an Islamist. He had nothing to do with Palestine or any global intifada. In fact, the stabbings were committed by a white Australian man, right? Rachel Riley has apologised for her tweet and deleted it. Julia Hartley-Brewer has kept hers up. She sort of admitted she was mistaken, but for some reason thinks she should still leave it up. Very bizarre. The Independent, at least, didn't pull their punches when covering the story. So they say, Rachel Riley says she's sorry if racist post about Sydney attack was misunderstood. So they've called the post racist. So Rachel Riley is known to be somewhat litigious. So, I mean, I think our lawyers would probably tell us, be careful about saying it's a racist post in a YouTube thing, because you'll get a letter from our lawyers. But the Independent, credit to them, have been confident enough to say this is a racist post, to say this is about a global intifada when it had nothing to do with Palestine or Muslims or anything like that. We'll come on to more of the reality of the situation that occurred in Sydney in one moment. First, though, Ash, these people are supposed to be professionals. What are they thinking?
Well, okay, there's 2 things I want to say. The first thing is that all of us have been bitten by the siren call of Twitter, inviting us to leap to conclusions before we've had all the information. And generally, it's just a bit embarrassing. Where I think that these are all kind of egregious cases is that not only did they leap to conclusions, it was seemingly a pretext to blame Muslims and the Palestinian cause more generally. So it wasn't just, okay, well, I made an assumption about what's going on based on partial information. That's fine. It's sort of then going, and this is why these people are barbarous murderers, da 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 da. What that gets you thinking is that that's something that you were just thinking all the time, and you were waiting for a convenient little news hook to hang those very bigoted and, in my opinion, racist perspectives on. And there's something, I think, darkly opportunistic about it. And I think that's what takes it beyond just a sort of, human leaping to conclusions thing that, I think we're all in. Very quickly, it all got a bit clash of civilizations. So it's quite revealing about what they're thinking about Muslims more generally, isn't it? Really quite revealing.
Rachel Riley has said that her tweet wasn't meant to imply that Muslims were involved or that this had anything to do with Palestine, and she was merely saying that the second intifada in Israel was violent, and this was an act of violence. So whenever we see an act of violence, we can say it's like the intifada, which doesn't seem that credible to me. But you can go and find her apology statement online and see if you find it particularly convincing. Let's talk about the reality of the attacks, though. It appears they were motivated by an extreme hatred of women. So 5 of the 6 people killed were female. The police have already said it was obvious that that's why they were targeted. Really, really tragic, horrific event. The father of the killer appears to have confirmed that theory as well.
Because he wanted a girlfriend, and he's got no social skills, and he was frustrated out of his brain. To you, he's a monster. To me, he was a very sick boy. Believe me, he was a very sick boy. I'm extremely sorry. I'm heartbroken for you. Look, this is so horrendous that I can't even explain it. You're trying to give you an intelligent conversation. I can't do it because I'm just devastated. I love my son. I made myself a servant to my son when I found out he had a mental illness. I became his servant. I did everything because I love that boy. He let himself down because, look, he was taken on medication because he was doing so well, but then he just took off to Brisbane, and I went down there and spent a day every now and again with him and did everything I can, but then he took off to Sydney.
Incredibly horrific attack. I mean, that was also, I thought, was really tragic watching the killer's father there. Ash, I mean, what can we say about this? I mean, this was clearly an act of violent misogyny. Also, the dad saying this guy had severe mental health difficulties. Can we add anything here?
I think that sometimes we tend to look at things in a very binary way. So we wrongly misrepresent um, mental health issues as being a, you know, fail-safe indicator that someone has a propensity towards violence. Now, we know that's not true. People with mental health issues are much more likely to be victims of violence than they are to be perpetrators of violence. And the other half of the binary is that when there is some kind of identity-based hatred, whether that's misogyny or a form of racism or homophobia or transphobia or ableism, we look at that as a form of evil and malevolence for which someone is totally and 100% morally responsible. And I think actually that in some cases, particularly in cases like this, the truth can be somewhere in the middle. I think that someone can have mental health issues in a way which potentially makes them less criminally responsible. Their ability to form mens rea, criminal intent, is diminished because of their mental health issues. And also, their targets of violence have been shaped by living within a culture or a society which sets up marginalized people as fair game, as people who are deserving of your disdain, your loathing, and your hatred. And that's not saying that this individual is, completely, not to be held responsible for anything he did. And it's also not saying that people with mental health issues are violent. It's not what I'm saying at all. The thing I'm saying is that where you do have an overlap between violence and mental health issues, that can express itself through these structural problems like misogyny.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly tragic situation, which I think was, these two journalists tried to exploit it, and they've been found out. I saw someone in the comments say actually that the only man who was killed was a Muslim security guard, which kind of makes the blaming of Muslims. I mean, Rachel Riley would clearly deny that she was blaming Muslims. I don't think Julie Hartley-Brewer can possibly claim she wasn't trying to blame. She'd say, I suppose she wouldn't say Muslims, she'd say Islamist extremists. But yeah, I mean, pretty grotesque from both of them, I think.